Greetings to everyone and welcome to this session of practical strategies for the classroom. I hope that the strategies that you see today are adaptable and an inspiration for you to perhaps alter them or innovate them on your own in your own class, depending, of course, on who you teach, where you teach, and how you teach. A few words about myself. My name is Beata Mirecka-Jakubow, and I come from Poland. I have lived in Indonesia for quite some time and also have taught in international schools in Greece and in Indonesia. I love the international setting of the schools that I've worked with and the intercultural understanding that the students are allowing the teachers to learn was absolutely phenomenal. One of the things that I really loved about the school is the inclusive mindset that was perhaps in some way inherent in the type of class that we had, because of course, as you can see in the pictures, there was a huge diversity of students in the class from different countries, different cultures. So the idea of learning together and learning from each other was very, very strong and nurtured in the classes in the way that we taught and that I taught. And this is something that I am going to share with you today. So let's learn together and share our learning as well. Perhaps these ideas that I will present to you today will be something that you already know. Perhaps you're familiar with them, but they may trigger some other way, an innovative way that you may have not thought about. And that's something that you can also share with others. So the first question that comes to my mind is, how does mindset influence teaching and learning? How do we come to the classroom with our baggage of experiences, with the knowledge that we have, and we encounter students who come into our classroom with equally heavy baggage on their shoulders, perhaps experiences that we have never experienced ourselves, perhaps experiences and knowledge that they can share with other people and that they can share with teachers and their friends in the classes. So that mindset of let's learn together, let's find out something about each other is a very strong element of these kinds of activities that involve group work and working together. One of the things that is often happening nowadays, especially with online learning and especially with not being able to meet with other people, is the feeling of not being included in the class. And that may be, of course, a problem that stems from a variety of issues. It could be a lack of or a limited opportunity for participation, especially in the online class when it's very easy to just click a button and disappear from the class. Perhaps there are limited opportunities for collaboration. Most of the classes nowadays are on Zoom, conducted on Zoom, maybe on Teams, and perhaps that is a challenge to teachers who have not been used to using this technology. The lack of opportunity for interaction with the teacher. Does the chat or email really help with the interaction, and of course the limited interactions between the students? But even when we come to the stationary face-to-face lesson, that situation can still be a limitation if the class is conducted in a lecture kind of way and the students really have very little possibility for participation or collaboration. Perhaps also it may be a situation in which there are opportunities, but because of the atmosphere of competitiveness, of fearing of mistakes, of fearing of being ridiculed, that is also creating that feeling of not being included in the class. So clearly, there are various reasons for the problems in both offline and online classes. And what are the results? One of the results is, and for me, a very important one because I'm an English teacher, is the insufficient practice of communication and collaboration skills. I believe that every student that leaves our high schools is going to be working with people, is going to be communicating, whether they go to college or not. They will eventually come to a workplace where they're going to be asked to collaborate with people. And that insufficient practice of those skills at a young age then exacerbates the challenges that young people have and encounter in their workplace because they haven't practiced enough. Another result is that insufficient development of key competencies. The group work and activities that can be done collaboratively also help students with leadership skills. And of course, the literacy, including digital literacy, is very important. That development of the competency of self-management, of time management, of planning, and reflection is also very important. So as a result of not having enough collaboration and cooperation with each other and not having enough participation in the class, just listening to somebody else speak and deliver the knowledge in a very passive way for the students, they become disengaged and silent. They become bored and they may be even disruptive. What happens to the teachers? Of course, the teachers are frustrated, overworked, and sometimes burned out, because I do believe that all teachers are trying their very, very best, especially in these trying times of the pandemic. So what are the solutions? Let's talk about the solutions and let's talk about how those solutions can be adapted to any of your classes. First thing is knowing your students. Always trying to find out as much as you can about them and periodically trying to get to know more about them through the activities and through the work that you set for them, and get their reflection, especially their reflections and their feedback to themselves as well. So having that knowledge helps you as a teacher, as an educator, connect with the student and help them channel their emotions and their feelings so that they feel good about themselves and they feel good about learning in general. I think that every teacher can understand the students very well, and especially in a classroom which is a monolingual, monocultural class, the personal histories and the way that students are perhaps brought up at home, that is something that can also either cloud the situation in the classroom and the atmosphere, or in some way influence it. So it's very important to know the students and navigate that baggage that we discover that they are carrying, and help them with their understanding of themselves and their mindset for learning. So here are a few example instructional practices and some elements for inclusive lesson design, perhaps that may be useful to you. The first question is, what is a good way to include and engage all of the students in learning? Some of you may have classes of 10, some of you may have classes of 40. And how do you include and engage all of them, especially when you've got them online? Well, here are a few ideas to start with. One of them is chunking the time and chunking the um, information that is being delivered in the lesson, switching it up, especially with online lessons, that the um, time devoted to one activity is not very long, and that activities alternate very quickly so that they keep the students engaged and keep the students sort of glued to the screen. Perhaps during a face-to-face lesson, you may be moving from the individual to pair work to whole class discussion, and those interactions include the students in the learning because they are engaged, they are doing something with somebody else, and of course are in a way engaged in a responsible way. In creative arts, for example, you can have a studio, a workshop, or station approach in many of the subjects. Station approach really works very well when students are working independently or in pairs or in small groups. You can then come up to a student and meet some individual needs. Of course, that is not going to be happening in every class, but the more you do it, the more you are able to get to know each other and help that student, at least one or two, with the greatest need of assistance. The content also can be in a way inclusive. When we're including students' lives and student identity, we can create a feeling of familiarity, sharing about their own lives and interests, and especially making that atmosphere risk-free, that students feel that they are able to be open to ideas, that they can trust others, and that this situation that they have in the classroom is actually helping them be learning in a safe way. So building that trust that's needed for that open-mindedness and the risk-taking, for the innovation, for learning forward, moving forward, making sure that they are not at risk of being bullied or ridiculed, which I totally understand is not an easy task. It's not an easy job for the teacher to balance that and to navigate all of that. One of the things that I have found that is very helpful is the buy-in. At the beginning of the classes, at the beginning of the school year, or even every semester, I really tried to get the students to feel like they are the ones in charge of the class. Let's learn together and let's share together. What is it that we want out of this class? And how can we ensure that everyone is respectful, that everyone is engaged, that everyone is polite, and that everyone is motivated? And in fact, when these posters went up on the wall, when these class rules, which I called guidelines, but of course the students were thinking about class rules, we have to follow rules. When those rules were generated by themselves and then posted in the class, they actually followed them. They were the ones that were policing each other and saying, hey, you know, you're behaving in a way that we didn't agree to. And that really helped me to maintain law and order in a way that was really very successful, I think, in a lot of ways. Not that I had any, that I didn't have any issues. Sometimes behavior issues did arise, but by and large, this buy-in really helped with that communication of respect, motivation, politeness, and being engaged. And the students were able to really help each other follow the rules and adhere to those guidelines. Various iterations of peer-to-peer teaching. Perhaps some of these will be known to you, but maybe something will be different. I think most teachers are aware of think, pair, and share, or think, pair, and wonder. The ideas here are quite well known, pairing up, taking turns to share the thoughts, listening to others, and then sharing in a big group. Once you get to know each student, you may also decide to pair them up according to their skill levels, according to the task that you want them to achieve. And then, of course, if there is a possibility for feedback and for their reflection as well of how did I feel about working with this person and that person on this particular task, may also give you insight into what is happening in that pair. The huddle is a very interesting way of sharing information. As you can see, the students there have little note cards that they had written earlier, and the idea is, of course, the football huddle of sharing information without the other huddle group hearing it. So this was a whispering exercise and getting the students out of their chairs. Sharing notes in a variety of ways is also extremely important. Whether they are writing on an idea board, whether they are writing on a shared Google Doc, sharing information and sharing notes really helps with understanding of what was happening, perhaps in a video, perhaps in an experiment, perhaps in a story or a chapter. So getting those opinions, getting the understanding from either textual information or auditory, that's also something that is really very helpful and gets the students collaborating in a variety of ways.
Where was the one that?
This is
Sequencing activities, as you can see,
Oh,
students working
yeah. This
together
goes together.
and trying to sequence panels of a
This
cartoon
goes
version
together.
of Romeo and Juliet. This can be adapted in a
oh, right
variety of
here.
ways. And
Romeo Dad.
in
It's quite safe.
every group that I set up, every student contributed. Every student had something to say. There were enough pieces for everyone to have something in their hand and to at least give it a try to put it together. So that is also an excellent way of involving every student in the learning. My favorite, in fact, is the slide and slide. So these students were, as you can see in the chart, lined up with one row stationary and the other row moving every 30 seconds. So in fact, every student was able to speak with at least two or three, sometimes even five, depending on how many students I had in the class. Sometimes I just made one row if I had space, sometimes two or three groups of rows facing each other. So whatever you can do in your class, in your situation, that is a very good way of sharing information, discovering or discussion of literature, of information that they have. Um, of course, group presentations and in an informal way, learning together and sharing together the information, that is important. Many times what I tried to do is as students presented and as students were able to share that information, I took notes, and their knowledge of the topics was actually tested from the notes that I took of what they heard and what notes they took as well while they were listening to each other. So in fact, the listening wasn't just passive. They had to take notes of what the other groups were presenting so that they were later able to answer the test questions or quiz questions. The same thing can happen with writing, and this situation may be a little bit different. All of the others were learner in the class. This idea is taken from classes that I taught at a lower language proficiency level, and we asked students from older classes, students from the National Honor Society, to help with editing and suggestions for writing. So as the younger students were creating their essays or their travel writing, travel articles, or they were writing their short stories, or they were writing their speeches, the older students were providing the editing tips, the suggestions of structuring or grammar or use of vocabulary. I helped the older students to learn a little bit of proper grammar that not all of them were able to use correctly as well. So it was a very interesting learning situation for them, but they were absolutely thrilled to be working together with students and helping them and feeling proud when the finished product was shared with them as well, and they were properly thanked with a letter of thanks. So this was a very simple to organize, but very fruitful and very effective learning activity for everyone. So that's something to think about, and that can be done in any Google Doc that is shared between the students. So the three things that you can do in your next class, and that is the chunking design lessons in which students can experience these different interactive activities. You can also apply the 10 to 5 rule, or even chunk your own teacher time further, so that the students have the time to process, to share, to repeat what they need to understand, and try to include every student in the talking session in some activity in which they need to use their voice and that they need to be involved in an activity in every lesson, so that they are talking to a partner, so that they are writing a self-reflection and sharing with you, or with a peer, so that there is a group activity that they can do even on Zoom, breakout rooms, perhaps also setting activities that are offline but involve students in a group task, which they basically have to connect and work together in some way, so that they are the presenters in the next class. Here is a little video of a student who I taught for several years. This is a student who is deaf and mute, so his voice is computerized, and he will tell you a few things about how this variety of group work activities influenced his learning.
Why has group work made me a better person? Even though some people prefer to work by themselves, group work can still empower you. Empowerment through group work results from the development of communication skills, the sharing of various perspectives, and the resolution of complicated problems. These important factors have enabled me to open doors to a new world.
So I'm hoping that my short talk has helped you and inspired you to use some of these ideas or perhaps share other ideas as well, and include all of the students in the learning in your classes. So my question for you at the end is, how do you or will you implement inclusive teaching and activities in your classes? Please do share with your colleagues, share online, and help others learn and teach in a more inclusive way as well. So thank you very much for your attention, and good day to you.